Hello everybody, welcome back to Bramski Vlogs. I'm Matt Bramall, and this is, as a channel, it's all about documenting my experiences working and traveling the mountains across the world. We are back with the ski chats. Now, for anybody who is a first-time viewer to the channel, this feature is all about bringing on guests from across the ski industry to discuss what it is that they're involved with. We go and we get into current topics also, amongst many other things. Now, just before I introduce today's guest, please make sure that you like this video, leave a comment, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Today, we turn our attention to life as a hotelier in an Austrian ski resort. I'm delighted to welcome Nick Brooker, who is the owner of Hotel Staffler. So, Nick, welcome.
Yeah, morning, Matt.
How are you?
I'm fine. Looking forward to our little chat.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to talk a lot about the Kitzbüheler Alps, Niederau, employing UK staff. We're looking back at some of the COVID challenges and, of course, Brexit also. But first of all, I'm really interested to learn about you and Hotel Staffler. So I kind of wanted to just start by asking you, I mean, how did you become a hotelier in the first place?
Long story, pretty much like you, actually. I started off as a rep, not for Crystal, summer resorts. I was always a skier. I'm a PE teacher by profession, so sport's always been my sort of bent, as it were, and skiing in particular. And I worked summers and then was co-opted by the companies I worked for to run their winter programs. And I started in Meyerhofen and Gerlos in the Zillertal back in 1981, would you believe? And really progressed through that. So it's 41 years now. We had myself and my wife, Jana, we had a ski tour operation for a number of years called Just Ski. Back in the day, we were in the mix with people like Blade and Lines. When it was major sort of chalet tour operators. We started with a couple of chalets in Serre Chevalier in the southern French Alps, and to progress to a schools program and 2 or 3 club hotels, which again was a British thing back in the day. And then 21 years ago, we came across the Staffler, and we've been operating that as a British hotel, really, since then, in Niederau, in the Wildschenau, which historically was always a British resort for beginners and intermediates. But as time has progressed, it's become very internationalized, lots of Germans, lots of local Austrians, Italians, and less Brits really all the time. But for us at the Staffler, we remain sort of a unique little bastion to the past, I suppose. We still run a full ski guiding program, 7 days a week. Austrian ski schools seem quite pragmatic about that. We've never had any issues, unlike the experiences of France, as we all know. And we remain that. We remain a very British hotel with British guests, and would you believe, still mostly British staff.
Right, well, that's really interesting, and I'm definitely going to ask a little bit more on that. From what I looked online, it's definitely one that's quite a loved hotel by families in particular. What makes it such a popular attraction?
I think, Matt, having done this for so many years, any establishment is just 4 walls and a roof. With hot water, hopefully, and good food. It's all about service. It really is. And that doesn't apply to us, and I'm not pushing us as the Staffler particularly. That applies across the industry. Absolutely. So really, that's always been our mantra since the beginning. It's all about service to the guest and working really, really, really hard at that. We're only really a 3-star hotel, but we sort of banded the idea that we offer a sort of 5-star service, as it were. And we work really hard now with online review sites. They are absolutely our gold dust. they cost nothing, but to glean good reviews is hard work for. And so things like Google, TripAdvisor, all the online travel agents that have review elements to their sites now, they are absolute gold dust to us. And we work really hard at every review, I think. So it's all about service, but for us still, it's all about ski guiding.
Talk us a little bit. Just can you give me a bit of, I guess, a bit of a visual description of what it might be like if I stepped into Hotel Staffler?
Quite manic. It's a bit like it's like a bit like an old pair of slippers. You know, it's a bit like walking into your front room. It's a bit like picking up the TV control and having a cup of tea and, flicking through the channels. It's home from home. We have guests now that have been traveling with us every year for 40 years, from previous incarnations of tour operations, and right back to when, like you, I was a rep. When I was 20, we have guests that traveled with me then that still travel with us now with their children, and their children travel with us with their children.
Yeah.
We have staff, we're employing this year 2 members of staff that are the grown-up children of parents that travel with us that didn't have children.
Wow.
So, I think we're pretty unique. I think in some ways, we're the last of a breed in terms of traditional club hotel, jumbo chalet type operation for ostensibly British guests.
Yeah. Can I ask you what it's like being an English hotel owner in Austria? Because from my experience of being in Austria, a lot of the hotels, the arms, it's all run within Austrian families, passed down through generations. So how have you found it being British?
Difficult to rent, really difficult to rent premises. You normally find that any foreign, non-Austrian businesses here that are restaurants, bars, hotels, chalets, are normally, historically, the ones that Austrians probably haven't wanted to run. You're absolutely right. Austrians keep their premises and businesses within their families. Yeah. They pass them down over generations. Niederau was always originally at the boundaries of the Kitzbüheler Alps. And so prices were lower. It was more difficult to get guests. The resort wasn't so busy. That's changed as time's gone on. It's as busy as the rest of it now. Yeah. So the further you go away from the popular sort of premier areas of a resort, the more you have an ability to maybe rent or buy. Yeah. And then it's all about trying to create your own business within that and work hard to make something that an Austrian would probably find quite difficult to run.
Okay. Well, look, let's get into the Kitzbüheler Alpen then. So tell us a bit about the region and where is it roughly in Austria? What's the attraction?
Well, you know it well. I know from previous blogs and conversations. I know it's an area that you hold dear to your heart. It's in the heart of the Austrian Tyrol. Kitzbühel is sort of the center, probably not the center of the skiing, but in terms of the name. So the Kitzbüheler Alps is now an absolutely massive region. Thousands of kilometers now joined together under one lift pass. State of the art uplift. Great slopes. I suppose you'll know this, that the slopes here tend to be fairly challenging, wide pisted reds. That's good cruising slopes across miles and miles and miles of piste. And in 21 years here, we've seen a real change. When we arrived here, it was it was actually a mixture of lots and lots of different resorts. And then there was a combination of resorts on the main Kitz mountain, which was called the Niederau. And then over the last, I think, 13, 14 years, that changed to the Ski Belt to encompass more resorts. And now, under one lift pass, the Salzburger Super Ski, it's endless from, I suppose, going on the far side of the Ski Belt. People would be probably more familiar with Elmau as the main resort on that side of the valley, right across to us in the Wildschenau, Niederau, Oberau and Alfach, and now connected with Altbach, which is consistently voted Austria's prettiest village. And even further afield, we're sort of at the epicenter, and with VW minibuses, we're able to transport guests within 40 minutes to endless skiing, really. The whole of the Ziller Valley, all the way up to Hinterturks, Meyerhofen, Kaltenbach. It really is endless. I think that a guest would find it difficult if they wanted to ski the same run twice in a week.
I think that's the one thing that's always struck me about Austria every time I've sort of been there for work or for a holiday skiing wise, is the ability to, I guess, sort of transport yourself via road or via train to a multitude of different connections. It's so easy. It's literally takes very little effort, very little time as well, and you're immediately somewhere new, doing something different, discovering another area. And it sort of always makes you want to come back and do it again, I feel.
Yeah, and the level of repeat business is huge, not just with us at the Staffler, but across most of the hotels that we know locally and further afield. And I think you're right. It has, we were, as with our previous tour company, we were based in France. We loved France. It was everything to us, But as time's gone on, and we've spent so much time now in Austria, for me, I'm settled here now, and we're settled here as a company, and Austria works for us. It really does, and the investment in uplift is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. New lifts, new infrastructure, new bars, new runs every winter, including over this really difficult COVID time. I was talking to the Hopfgarden, that's our closest Ski Belt access lift manager yesterday. And although they've not invested in any new lifts this winter, they've created and worked with a new restaurant on the mountain at a place called Itter, which cost 12 million euros. A hotel above the restaurant. They've last year a new gondola was installed in Itter, 22 million euros, and Christine, the lift pass manager, told me that they've just decided to remodel the whole of the home run from the top of it to the bottom and cannon it on both sides and whatever. So investment is absolutely massive, and Austrians work on a 50-year turnaround really on infrastructure. They get really good support from central government. They get good support from local government, Tyrol government. They get long interest-free loans as long as they follow a green and sustainable model in terms of what they do. Wow.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's quite interesting. Like because I've always, from the outside looking in, I've always just seen it as very much of Austrians have had a very good reinvestment strategy. They always take whatever money they earn from the season and reinvest it back, whether that is in the lift infrastructure or in the hotels. But that's quite a good bit of insight. Niederau, let's tell me a bit more about Niederau. So why would somebody visit Niederau?
I think if you asked me this question 10 years ago, I would say because they're a family, because they haven't skied before, or they've done a couple of seasons and they don't quite feel that they're an intermediate skier, which is a strange analogy anyway, isn't it, for a British skier? Lots of people say they're an intermediate. It covers all sorts of things, doesn't it? But if they've got families, if they've got young kids that want to ski, learn to ski, then Niederau has always been a really popular resort for that. We're at about 1,000 meters in the resort, which is as high as Ben Nevis. I think that's the analogy between the UK. The slopes are in the middle of the resort. You walk no more than 5 minutes to get onto the nursery slope. The main gondola in the resort is bang in the middle of the nursery slopes. It's easy, it's comfortable, it's safe. Great ski schools. That was always what it was. Now it's about that, but it's really about its geographical position compared with everything else. So you're 15 minutes away by ski bus from Alfach, and then connecting to Altbach, which is on a system called the Ski Dual, which came into being with a new lift infrastructure about 4 years ago, and so that's quite popular. That's about 200 kilometers of piste, but it's then about the ability to ski much further afield and use Niederau as your base, because it is in the center of so much that the Tyrol offers. It's a little bit like the Zilla Valley, really, that you buy a Zillertal pass and you ski all the resorts on the Zillertal, and it doesn't really matter where you're based.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay. Right. Well, you were just starting to tell me off air what it was like last winter. Obviously, COVID has wreaked havoc with the travel and the tourism industry. So give me a bit of an insight into what it was like last winter.
Heavenly, but awful. Awful commercially, obviously. Not at all good for the bank balance. But in terms of an ability to ski, I think we're all aware that really Switzerland and Austria were the only countries that remained open in terms of an ability to ski fairly normally. Switzerland remained open commercially, allowing guests to travel, caused some issues, as we all know. Austria took the view that no tourism whatsoever because of COVID, but to allow all Austrians to ski the whole of their ski product, every hill in the Tyrol, remained open. Pretty much 90% of all lifts remained open pretty much all season. No restaurants, no bars. Though as time progressed over the winter and the weather got better and a bit warmer, some restaurants did open for outdoor service. So it was just locals on a mountain, and it might seem that the Austrians decided to do that because they're lovely people and the government really thinks about its population, but it was actually because ski lifts come under public transport in terms of legislation in Austria, and therefore public transport, trains, buses, had to run. And so lift companies took the view that they were public transport as well, and so legislation allowed them to open, and so they did, and so all Austrians took the opportunity to buy a season pass, and most would buy what's called the Tyrol card, which is an all-encompassing 95% of all ski resorts in the Tyrol come under one card. And for a local, a resident, that's, would you believe, 680 euros for the season.
Yeah.
And for children under 12, I think, 238 euros.
Wow.
So who wouldn't?
Yeah.
we skied. I don't know, 60 resorts over the winter. We skied 3-4 days a week, just mornings, because if a restaurant's not open, what's the point? Because obviously part of skiing is the ability to have a nice lunch, and then the afternoon looks after itself in some ways. So mostly mornings, with a rucksack and take a drink and a couple of rolls in the back of the rucksack. But in terms of skiing, as I said to you off air, Elmau, for example, 2 p.m., 3 p.m, coming down the home run with just our staff and the stripes on the snow from the pea splashes still there. I think talking to Austrians here, an absolute one-off, one would hope.
Yeah, but I imagine for the bars and of course like the hotels like yourselves, it must have been quite a frustrating time not being able to have guests.
Yeah, I think like everybody, fundamentally you do this, you get involved in hospitality because you like people. If you didn't, there's no point. And I think fundamentally everybody missed their clients. The bars, the atmosphere. The Staffler, we carry a couple of thousand people a winter, completely empty, just some staff. But also bottom line, I think, Matt, in terms of finance, Austria offered quite reasonable support in terms of COVID support, just like the UK, I think. A similar format in terms of some help for staff, some help for businesses based on turnover and profit percentages and stuff. I mean, listen, nothing like being open and a real struggle for lots of people. But yeah, there was some support, but resorts feel empty. Resorts felt dead, awful, But we probably in Austria had an easier time than lots of others. 10 million population, lots of space. No issues with COVID on a mountain, lots of space, lots of fresh air. People are muffed up naturally, aren't they? Because they have a ski helmet on and might have a buff on or something. So I think it was probably easier for us than back in the UK.
I remember right at the start of the winter, and I was covering it quite a bit on sort of will they, won't they, in terms of each European country opening their skiing, and there was a lot of debate. It got very political. As you touched on, Austria and Switzerland sort of stayed open. I mean, what was the feeling like at that time? Did you guys think you should have opened? Did you think you should have closed?
Well, I think we were like anybody in Austria and other countries as it happened. We were merrily enjoying a full hotel on I think it was the 17th of March 2019.
19, yeah.
Yeah, such a long time ago. 17th of March, full, absolutely full. The Easter was in the season because, as you know, with ski holiday, with winter operations, you are beholden to Easter being early or late and open or closed. And so we were enjoying looking forward to an Easter, and we were full building up to Easter. And 7 hours later, a directive came through, and it was like the last helicopter off the roof of the American embassy in Saigon. It was. We had, I can remember, we had 100 guests. In fact, it was the weekend that we were told that we had to empty the hotel and everybody had to go home. It was the weekend of our Just Ski reunion. We hadn't seen people for 35 years. We were absolutely full of people from 80 to 20, and within 8 hours we were empty. Within 8 hours, we had helped to facilitate people getting to an airport that would accept people to go back to the UK. We had people that were hiring minibuses from Hertz in Innsbruck to drive back to the UK. because the borders were closing. They were closing by the hour. You know, there was so much uncertainty. The only certainty was that they had to go.
Yeah.
And I think we had in the end about a 12-hour window to get everybody home. You really can't believe it. You can't fathom it. You can't really think how you achieved it. But we went from a full hotel to an empty hotel, 17th of March, and that was it. That was it. And we've been closed, and we're still closed because we ostensibly have British guests. So we were going to open in the summer for some business, but Austria put a block, if you remember, on British guests being able to travel to Austria until the 1st of September. In the end, they rolled back on that a little bit, and it was late August. But that's nearly the end of the season. There is no point, and so we've been closed. God, I can't even work it out. 18 months, I think. 18 months.
Wow.
Interesting.
Blimey. I had heard stories of the evacuation weekend in France, but I hadn't really seen much of or heard much of what really went on in Austria. I did watch the BBC documentary on Ischgl and everything that took place then, but I can only imagine just how crazy, bizarre, stressful that weekend was.
I think it's probably similar to years ago when the Berlin Wall came down. Almost you can imagine yourself in East and West Germany over that evening. And looking back on it, as the kids would say, they just wouldn't believe you. So it was quite bizarre. There were interesting times, Matt.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, tourism is quite fundamental to Austria. I mean, as you say, a population of about 10 million, and the mountains bring so many people to Austria, whether that's Brits, Germans, people from elsewhere in Europe. So, I mean, what was sort of the tourism community as a whole around you? What sort of been their overriding emotions during the time? Has it been?
I think when your previous question, I didn't really answer part of that. You talked about the political side, didn't you?
Yeah,
and those implications. Listen, lots of this has been political. I think, personally speaking, over the last sort of 18 months, anyway. Tourism in Austria, Tyrol, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it, unless you're a farmer, unless that tourism is 90% of the economy. If you don't rely on it directly, you rely on it indirectly. Absolutely, and so it's been tough. It's been tough. I think the Austrians probably, I think the Austrians have probably done quite a little bit better than the UK, because Austrians fundamentally don't borrow money. Hotels are the result of a cowshed in the 1650s on a mountain that over time ended up being a 5-star hotel with 650 beds on the same spot, owned by the same family. So the family will often have owned that land since it was that cowshed, and now they are the purveyors of all they have, which are these massive hotels. But they haven't borrowed to achieve it. Absolutely, they reinvest, but an Austrian's quite canny. So I think in terms of COVID, Austrians probably haven't suffered so much because they've had some money. But in terms of bars, restaurants on mountains, terrible. In terms of ski hire, there's 3 ski hire shops in a little village like Niederau. If you expand that across the Tyrol, they all invest massively. They They buy new equipment yearly. They spend lots of money on ski maintenance equipment. Our local ski shop invested, I think, about £25,000 in a ski tech machine, which they bought in February, and 3 weeks later they were closed, and they haven't opened since. And I think most people are probably okay and looking forward to this winter. I dread to think if the same thing happened again.
Well, hopefully it doesn't come to that, and we'll talk about next winter shortly. But let's get on to something which I think has sort of almost been an afterthought because of COVID, but that is the effects of Brexit on employing UK staff across Europe, and yourselves being a predominantly like British hotel, as you say. I'm sure that's affected you in quite a few ways.
Yeah, and I think the Brexit withdrawal created issues that people didn't think were going to be issues initially. And one of those for businesses like ours is employment. And that all comes down to the withdrawal agreement. And absolutely, you're aware of that. And I'm really congratulations on getting your visa for Canada. Fantastic. But that has created all sorts of problems. So for us, as a British operator running a hotel in Austria with British guests, it's been a double whammy for us. It's been COVID and it's been Brexit. And in terms of Brexit, it's about employing staff. I think, as I said earlier, our guest base is mostly British. We run a traditional model, which I really don't know if anybody else does that at all these days. And that works because the majority of our staff are British or have been British. We employ normally about 15 or 16 staff each winter, and a number are the classic gap year students that would always come over and work for a winter as a rite of passage, I suppose. But because of the nature of the beast, quite a lot of our staff are long-termers. They're people that work for us for 8, 9, 10 years, and some longer. And it was all thrown up in the air, basically. And I don't think people realise. I don't think even I don't think the main tour operators realise, the Crystals, the Inghams of this world, the TUIs. I just don't think they realise what the issues were really going to be. And I think they're living with those issues, those problems now. Absolutely. And as is the case in the UK, the travel and tourism, hospitality, everybody's understaffed. Your issues at home with bars and restaurants not having enough staff to run them and having to close for a couple of days a week to give people time off, etc., is mirrored here as well. It is exactly the same. The lorry driver scenario is not a British scenario. There are no lorry drivers in Austria. The supply chains have the same problems here as the UK. So that the problems you have at home are reflected here. But in terms of employment, there is none. If you did not arrive here and stay and were employed before the 31st of December last year as a Brit, you will not work in Austria unless you get a visa.
Yeah.
End of. Bottom line, no negotiation. Austria, like the UK, does have a quota system. I think in the UK, it's, for example, around fruit picking, isn't it? Where Eastern Europeans would come over, EU people would come over and fruit pick, and there would be a quota easing the visa scenario. They had that system here, but there's no travel and tourism on any of the quotas. Honestly, I think we're probably being punished a little bit. I think there is a little bit of an overreaction to employment and other aspects of, and almost a sort of punishment. And I think probably over the next couple of years, 3 years, that will ease. I think that will change. Yeah. I think about that personally. May not be what other people think, but I think there is a little bit of an overreaction. but I think that will ease. We've got 8 staff that have stayed with us since before Christmas on the payroll, to enable them to get their residency in Austria. So they end up with dual residency, UK and Austrian, which is possible. And so we have 8 members of staff, our core British team that have become Austrian residents to be able to work, and they get what's called I think it's an AUE 50 card, which they will get for 5 years because they haven't been here for a long tenure. I had to do the same thing. My wife's had to do the same thing. Although we've lived here for 21 years, we have a business in Austria. We had to apply for our residency. We get a 10-year card. And then you have, with both the 5 and 10-year card, an automatic right to extend that after the 5 or 10 years. The 5-year card, if you extend it, you get a 10-year card. The beauty of the card is that you become part of the Schengen family. You have it's just as it was before, free trade and movement within Austria, not Europe, but within Austria. But you take the European queue at the airport, for example, and not the third country queue. You are legally allowed to leave Austria on the 5-year card for 6 months in every year. You can leave and come back, no problem. Passport stamps, doesn't matter. You can leave for 6 months. You are a resident.
Yeah.
On the 10-year card, I could come back to the UK tomorrow, and I could remain in the UK for 5 years, and then return to Austria, and I remain a resident. And in some ways, I think for those that have residency, it makes things, it confirms things a bit more. Yeah. There is a certainty.
Yeah, which has definitely been lacking in not just tourism, but in a lot of industries, for the last 18 months because of Brexit and because of COVID. I mean, I'm interested to know how you see this affecting this coming winter, because obviously, first thing, a lot of ski businesses, tourism businesses have had to first deal with the will it or won't it, will travel actually open up for them to operate, and then also having to worry about the staffing issue, with Brexit having a big effect on that, because let's face it, a lot of the jobs in ski resorts have been done by a lot of young Brits traditionally, whether that is, the hotel jobs, the ski instructing, like especially in Austria, like I know there's so many British people who typically are British. So how are they going to cope with that is what?
Difficult to know. So I'm just going to go back one part of your last question. I don't think I answered, which was we talked about the residency and the guys that the Brits who were able to work here. Yeah. But I didn't talk about the classic, the student that would want to come and work a winter.
Sure. Now
that has a UK passport. I just think it's impossible this winter. And you and lots of others have commented on this, and for example, on Facebook, there's a Facebook ski club page, isn't there? That's quite that's used by quite a lot of people. Everybody refers to it, I think. And I see, and there's a jobs page as well. I know
there's loads.
Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, you'll find those Facebook groups pretty much for every single resort. There will likely be one for Niederau somewhere, and it will be just tons of people joining, saying, look, they're looking for a job. And you're right, because of the arrangements that as they are for after Brexit for now, I think unless you've already gotten yourself out there pre-December the 31st last year, got yourself a residency card or anything like that, or other work, you're not going to be getting there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I've watched your vlogs over the last few months, and you tried to help and offer advice, but it's tough, it's difficult to offer advice when always in a state of flux, and nobody's really sure what's going on. But I think there are real certainties now, and those certainties are that unless you have an EU passport, so going back one stage again, we are employing 4 or 5 staff now because they're EU passport holders: Irish, Greek, Spanish, Swedish. So we have a real mix. We have our core British staff, residents, then we have European passport holders. The world is their oyster in terms of resorts, because not only are it's a buyer's market. Not only are they able to work because they're EU passport holders, but they have choice. They have choice now. They can dictate really terms, where they want to work, what sort of job they want, because so many operators, so many suppliers don't have enough staff, and that whole tranche of UK workers that would come out to Austria, France, wherever, they are no longer there. So for that gap year student that you've tried to advise over many vlogs, the route is a 4 or 5 week job application in the local employment office. If nobody decides to take that job as an Austrian, then only then are you allowed to apply for a visa. Yeah. You can't simply apply for a visa. You have to have the stamp to say nobody else wanted that job who's a local. Then you can apply for a visa. I think the visa fee is €270. It's not the employer. The employer offers the job, but it's not the employer that has to lead that process. It's the possible employee, and it's a visa application to fill in. It's everything that you've gone through in terms of your Canadian visa, which I think puts most people off anyway. And then it's 50-50. Yeah. 50-50.
So the employer doesn't have any involvement in terms of work permits or anything like that. It is solely down to someone who, is that committed. They've got to find whatever avenue they can.
Yeah, like you in Canada, I think they have to be offered a job. Yeah. There has to be a job to go to, the confirmation of a job should they get the visa. But then a lot of this process now has to be, you're right, employee-led, where it was always employer-led. The reality was that for many, many years, while we were within the EU, all UK staff worked on an A1 certificate, which meant that they were still beholden to HMRC in the UK, in terms of national insurance and stuff, and it almost bypassed the EU. It still remained in many cases a UK employee. Yeah, that's gone completely now. So unless you hold an EU passport or you are a resident, I honestly think personally there is no point. There is no point in hoping that you will be able to do what you may have been able to do in the past. Ski schools, lots of British people working as qualified Austrian ski school staff, people working driving vans, transfers, pickups, people working in ski hire shops, people working in restaurants, people working in a hotel like the Staffler. Yeah, those jobs will not be taken up by Austrians. But they may well be taken up now by more European passport holders. I'm aware, for example, Crystal, who I know you work for a number of years. They are looking frantically at their summer staff that are EU passport holders that are working Croatia or Holland or France or wherever, but non-ski resorts, and they're trying to pull those in to work as resort reps. I'm also aware that whole structure in Niederau, for example, tiny little village, Crystal was a team of 6 or 7 staff, a resort manager, an admin person, maybe a couple of Crystal nannies, and then 3 or 4 reps working the hotels. That model's gone. I have no idea how that's going to work as a British tour operator.
I think for the tour operators in particular, I think for the last couple of years, bit by bit, they've generally been reducing their in-resort service, partly due to, either uncertainty or just concerns about what was going to happen after Brexit in terms of the challenges of that. But then also to mirror actually what customer trends were, because obviously there's a lot, you do have a lot more people now who like to kind of book things on their own. There's a lot of use of digital services. So I know that tour operators have tried to position themselves a little bit more like that, where staffing costs are less of an issue, but also that is, like you say, predominantly forced on because of Brexit. I'd love to get your opinion on, with a lot of companies now gonna be predominantly prioritizing people with EU passports, be that Brits who have got out there just in time, or people from Holland, from Croatia, those places like you said. How do you think that's going to affect the quality of customer service, and B, what do you think holiday makers, especially Brits, are going to feel like, if they're being served by someone from Holland rather than a Brit?
I think maybe there are positives here.
Okay.
I think that there's always a degree of complacency. Maybe somebody with a different language and a different attitude and outlook is quite positive. Going back to what you said about the tour operators, I absolutely agree with you. I think that traditional model of when you were repping, or back in the day when I was repping, where it was all customer facing, that you almost sometimes followed the rep to the next resort where that rep was working. Yeah. That was the important thing. The rep, the guide, the representative was such a catalyst and such a character that person would be followed wherever they went. And you would get, I can remember when I was working, you would get guests phoning the tour operator to find out where Matt or Nick were working in the summer or the winter, and they would book their holiday accordingly. That model's gone. It's as time has progressed, it's about profit and loss. It's about costings. It's about scale. And I've noticed over the last number of years that the operators become more iPad savvy and more iPad led than customer service. And really your role now would, I think, probably be as much more about admin than customer facing. The classic, working out how many lift passes you've sold, doing the admin on client complaints, etc., the whole gambit of stuff. So I think what Brexit has done, with many other areas, it's probably brought forward what was going to happen over the next 2 or 3, 4, 5 years anyway. And that whole in-resort model, I think, is gone. You're right. Most people now, lots of people now, are their own travel agent. They book a flight, they book a hotel, they find it interesting and exciting to put together their package online. We are 100% private guests. All our guests book their flight, book direct with us, and travel independently, and therefore we are not a 7-day model in terms of an operation. Classically, Austria was Saturday. That was it. Transfers, awful, because the whole world was traveling on a Saturday. Now we are between 2 and 16 days. I would say our classic guest now is probably a 4 or 5 day guest, a long weekend guest. And by long weekend, it's strange because a long weekend can be Wednesday to Tuesday. But a long weekend guest, 3-4 nights, booking their EasyJet, Ryanair, whatever flights, traveling on a Wednesday because the flight price is a quarter the price that it might be on a Saturday. So they are led by economics, but they also have the ability to be flexible. And we really work as a model because, we over years, we build up an email database of guests. It's so easy to talk to those guests now online. We could run our business, I suppose we don't, but we could run our business if we were on holiday in Bermuda.
Yeah.
Because we have iPhone and internet, So I think that whole model, but you were talking about repping and how these big companies work. I think the model is probably dead in the water, that old model. And it's those that adapt. It's Crystal and Ingham's and TUI being able to adapt. And the one thing they have in their favor is that the ski market remains the last bastion of where the general public are a little bit wary and a little bit scared still. That's not sort of the word I should use, I suppose, of booking the product themselves, because there's so many elements. Yeah. The ski hire, the lift pass, the transfers, which resort because of their ski ability. So tour operators are still able to take quite a percentage of that market because people are comfortable to give it to a tour operator. Yeah. Maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, Matt, that will go, and it's the companies like TUI that are or Crystal that are nimble. Yeah. And able to change and adapt. So in terms of employment, I don't think it's so much of an issue because I don't think they'll be using so many staff. It's almost now an app, isn't it? And somebody at the end of an app or at the end of a phone or the end of an email or WhatsApp or being able to advise somebody of an issue they've got.
Yeah. Look, let's get on now to our final topic, which is this coming winter, which seems to be a lot more certain than it was maybe about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Travel restrictions generally do seem to be sort of heading in the right direction and then I know vaccination rates are up pretty high across the continent. How are you guys shaping up for this winter?
Yeah, we're really buoyant. We're really confident about the winter. We really are. We have a weekly update page on our website in terms of COVID and how it is and affects our guests in terms of the UK and Austria. That I can remember 7-8 months ago. That page on the website wasn't a page; it was 3 pages. Yeah. That page on the website, I'm just doing it this morning to update it this afternoon, is 3 paragraphs. 3 paragraphs. And actually, bizarrely, the header that we always put on our COVID page on the website has always been the Staffler logo. Today, it's going to be a Morecambe and Wise figures on the front of the Staffler Hotel as a little montage with underneath the copy of Bring Me Sunshine, because it looks like we are moving from, I hope, pandemic to endemic. Yeah. To probably living with something rather than being dominated by. In terms of quarantine, there is no quarantine in Austria. The UK is on Austria is on the UK's green list. There are no quarantine restrictions in terms of anybody travelling to Austria as long as they are double vaccinated. Mm-hmm. In Europe, it's all about what they call the green pass. In Europe, it's all about double vaccination and proof of, unlike the UK. So proof of double vaccination. Arrive at the UK airport, get on the flight with the mask, get off at Munich. Munich is the same. Germany is the same. You're in transit between Germany and Austria. There are no restrictions. If you were staying in Germany for a night, for example, at the moment, you would have to fill in a German locator form. But because you're just transiting from Munich to Austria, then it's nothing. They'll just check your QR code. And away you go. When you arrive in Austria, there are no restrictions. There's no registration. There's nothing. We check the QR code. You have your holiday. 3 days before you return home, you walk to our local pharmacy, which is about 100 meters away. You take a PCR test free at the local pharmacy. Free at the local pharmacy.
Test, are you sure?
Yeah, the results are with you on your phone within 10 minutes. It's another world, Matt. It's another world. And then you get on your flight and you fly back to the UK, and then you have to pay £1 million for your PCR test and get it in a month. What we feel is that I think the government in the UK, between now and the beginning of October, they've got their next travel review. Yeah. Lots of chat in the industry is traffic light system goes, PCR system goes, lateral flow test free in the UK is what you'll take, and that will the market will open up. Yeah, the market will open up. But in terms of somebody coming on holiday here, and now I know that it's now 15 to 17-year-olds have been jabbed quite regularly at home now, and you've just started with the 12s to 15s. That all happens here anyway. That's been happening forever. So kids under 12, as long as they're accompanied by a vaccinated adult, can travel, and there's no restriction in either direction. Yeah. So there is very little now stopping somebody coming to our hotel to ski, and that's reflected in our bookings. We're about, I think, I was talking to my good lady wife who really runs the business, and she felt we were about 20-25% up in terms of bookings for this winter. Oh, wow. And we are a busy hotel, man. We're thankfully 85, 90, 95% occupancy season long, year on year. We've been here a long time. You know, we offer a product. But we're up on bookings, and we're up on inquiries. You know, people that are asking about availability. So I think there's a lot of pent-up demand. I think things are easing all the time. Kurtz, the Chancellor here, has said another lockdown over my dead body. Yeah. It won't happen. It won't happen. I don't think the Austrians will accept it. They really won't. They're quite liberal as they are. Only about 65% of people have been vaccinated here because civil liberties are huge in terms of an Austrian individual's agenda. The Austrians have regulations in place to try to force these people to be vaccinated. As of today, you cannot go to a football match, into a nightclub, into a bar without being double vaccinated. That's it. End of story. They are now charging the locals for testing, whereas it's always been free. So we're really, really positive. There is nothing stopping a Brit traveling to Austria today, really, apart from that little issue of the PCR paid for test and all the problems that come with that when they get back to the UK. Yeah. I think even with that in place, we're 12 weeks away from the start of a season. Even with that in place, it's bound to change in the UK. I think things will get easier for the returning guest in the UK. And we're really positive. Everybody here is really positive about the winter. And as with the UK, I think their attitude here is we need to learn to live with this issue. Yeah. Because if we don't, we're dead in the water. Yeah. Definitely. Nick, we've almost got to wrap it up. I just want to ask one last thing, actually, which is about the famous Austrian Aprés Ski, which has very much been parked, shall we say, because of COVID and certain events. I think unfairly it's been given a bad rap because of that. But, you know, anyone that goes to Austria to ski knows that the experiences off the mountain are just as magical and as enjoyable as they are on the piste. And I feel like Austria rivals, you know, it's streaks above anywhere else, but it's been banned. I've seen some stuff in the press over the last week or so saying that you're going to be needed to be double jabbed to Aprés or to be able to go in a restaurant. Like, are you able to share any light on that? Like, yeah, I think you're probably right. I think you're absolutely right that there's nothing like Austrian Aprés Ski, though that Aprés Ski music
Yeah.
that every bar has does become quite nightmarish over a number of years.
Okay.
Because it never changes. But
Yeah.
Austrian Aprés Ski is well famous. We know that. There is legislation. There are regulations in place. They haven't announced the winter regulation program yet, but all indications are it's all about a double jab.
Okay.
In fact, it's all about a double jab until about 3 or 4 days ago. It was all about a booster, because Austria introduced some major legislation about a week ago that said that anybody's second injection that ran out that was taken 9 months ago meant that their vaccinations were invalid. Austria introduced a 270-day rule.
Right.
So anybody that second jab was older than 270 days would not allowed to be able to travel to Austria unless they're quarantined for 5 days. And that was on the statute book. And we worked out that we would not have a guest traveling to the Staffler after the 5th of February.
Right. Okay.
So that was quite an issue. And it wasn't just an issue for us, that we're talking about Austria. Yeah. And that was for not just a Brit, that was for every incoming tourist from around the world, including Europe, 270 days. I think what they did, they took a little bit of a view and they realized that they weren't going to have one tourist in the country after the 5th of February.
Yeah.
And so they still have that rule in place, but they've now increased it to a year.
Yeah.
It's now called the 365-day rule.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there's a booster program starting in the UK for the over 50s, which means that the second jab would become the third jab, and therefore the 270-day rule wouldn't really apply. And it doesn't anyway, because they withdrew it yesterday from legislation, thankfully.
Yeah.
What was your question? I do apologise.
I think that we've covered all we can for the moment, but I feel like we could go on plenty more. But listen, Nick, where can people find Hotel Staffler if they want to check out the hotel?
Yeah, I've enjoyed this, and I've enjoyed this for not necessarily for a commercial reason. I've enjoyed having a chat with you, and I've really been frustrated over many months about the lack of information from on the ground.
Yeah.
As it is reality, and I think your vlog and you, it's great. And I congratulate you for being able to allow somebody to have this chat, so more people are aware of what's actually happening, I think, in reality. But in terms of the Staffler, take a look at our website at www.stafflerhotel.com. It's easy. You can pick us up on TripAdvisor, see our reviews. We're number 1 in the Valley. We are a TripAdvisor Traveler's Choice holder. We are ranked 15 of all hotels in Austria for service, which is great for a Brit. We're on Google. We're all over the place, really. You can just get online and take a look. We are pretty busy. Lots of people are booking with us 2 years ahead for peak dates, which again is a model of 25 years ago, Matt. It doesn't happen, but it does happen with us, thankfully. I know I invited you to come out and stay with us just before Christmas, but unfortunately you've got your visa for Canada, so you can't join us. I know that.
Listen, and I really appreciate you giving me that offer. I would definitely have loved to have come out there and I've obviously checked the place out and done some filming. Super. But I tell you what, and ski, yes, definitely, of course. I will definitely be missing the Austrian mountains this winter, but I think it'd be great to check in back with you later on in the winter.
Anytime, Matt, anytime.
Yeah, well, listen, thanks very much, Nick, and I wish you all the best for this season.
Great, it's been a pleasure. Nice talking to you.
Cheers. And thank you very much, guys, for watching today. I hope you've all really enjoyed this video, found it very informative. If you do have any questions or thoughts about everything that we've talked about today, life as an Austrian hotelier, the Kitzbüheler Alpen, Niederau, last winter, the effects of COVID on tourism, of course, Brexit's involvement on employing UK staff, Hotel Staffler, if you have been and stayed there, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. But don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and I will see you all next time. Take care, guys.